Finally, she cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Her voice had that polite, southern sweetness people use when they're about to tell you something unpleasant. "There must be some kind of mistake." I smiled. Not because anything was funny. Because when you've survived the Whitmore family, a wedding planner isn't exactly intimidating. "What kind of mistake?" She glanced at her tablet again, then lowered her voice. "The groom doesn't have a sister." For a second, I just stared at her. The live band inside was playing something soft and expensive. Champagne glasses clink. Guests laughed somewhere beyond the ballroom doors. And suddenly I was 19 years old again, standing in a dining room where nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. I reached into my purse, pulled out a photograph. Old, faded, corners bent from being carried around too many years. The planner took it, looked down. 3 kids standing in front of a Christmas tree. A blonde girl, a dark-haired boy, and a skinny, red-headed teenager in an oversized sweater. Caroline, Noah, me. The planner's face lost all its color. I pointed at the boy in the center. "That's the groom." Then at the girl, my sister. Then finally, at myself. And unless somebody rewrote history while I was driving over here. I took the photo back. "I'm pretty sure that's me." The poor woman looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. "Oh my God. Yeah. I'm so sorry." "It's all right." "No, seriously." She lowered the tablet. "They told us immediate family would be arriving separately." I almost laughed at that. Immediate family. That was rich. Because according to the Whitmores, I hadn't been family for 11 years. Not officially. Nothing dramatic like that. There was never a legal document. No shouting match. No public declaration. The Whitmores were much too polished for that. They simply did something colder. Something cleaner. They stopped talking about me. At first it was subtle. A missed phone call here. An invitation that never arrived there. A Christmas card without my name. Family photo where somehow I wasn't standing anymore. Then years passed. And eventually, people started assuming I never existed. Which is impressive when you've spent 19 years living in the same house. The planner looked toward the ballroom. Then back at me. "Would you like me to get Mr. Whitmore?" The question hit harder than it should have. Because once upon a time, Noah would have come running the second someone mentioned my name. When we were kids, he followed me everywhere. Tree houses, fishing docks, movie theaters. It drove me crazy. Then, somewhere along the way, he learned what the rest of the family already knew. It was safer not to stand next to Clare. I adjusted the sleeve of my navy dress. The silver bracelet on my wrist caught the evening light. Grandma Margaret's bracelet. The only thing I wore to every important moment in my life. "Don't bother," I said. The planner hesitated, then nodded. I started toward the ballroom entrance. Heart pounding. 11 years. 11 years since I'd last walked into a room with my family. 11 years since my father looked me in the eye. 11 years since my mother chose reputation over her daughter. And the craziest part? I wasn't even supposed to be here. Because 3 weeks earlier, an envelope had arrived at my Manhattan apartment. No return address. No name. Just 5 words typed across a single white card. "If you don't come now, you'll regret it forever." And standing outside my brother's wedding, I still had no idea who sent it. As Claire steps into the ballroom, she spots someone across the room staring directly at her. And the look on their face says one thing. They never expected her to come. The first person to move was Noah. Not his mother. Not his father. Not the wedding coordinator. Noah. His face had gone completely pale, like someone had punched all the air out of his chest. For a second, Claire thought he might actually walk away. Instead, he slowly stepped forward. Claire. The words sounded strange coming from him, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. 11 years. 11 years since she'd heard her brother say her name, and somehow it still sounded familiar. Claire smiled politely. Not warmly, not coldly, just politely. "Hey, Noah." Nobody else spoke. The entire ballroom seemed frozen. The string quartet had stopped playing. Guests were whispering. Phones were already coming out. People love drama when it's happening to someone else's family. Noah swallowed hard. "I didn't know you were coming." Claire tilted her head slightly. "Yeah." Small smile. That was kind of the point. A nervous laugh escaped from somewhere in the crowd. Nobody joined it. The silence returned immediately. Then Noah glanced toward their parents. Big mistake. Because Claire followed his eyes. And suddenly, there they were. Richard and Diane Reed. Older now. Her father had more gray hair. Her mother had deeper lines around her eyes. But otherwise, they looked exactly the same. And for one strange moment, Claire felt 16 again, standing in the kitchen, trying desperately to be enough, trying desperately to be loved, trying desperately to belong. The feeling lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then it vanished, because 16-year-old Claire no longer existed. And thank God for that. Diane finally found her voice. "Claire." Her hands trembled. "We thought..." She stopped, because apparently she had no idea how to finish that sentence. Claire decided to help. "You thought I'd never come back?" Diane looked down, which was answer enough. The room suddenly felt very warm. Noah rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he'd had since childhood. Whenever he was uncomfortable, whenever he was scared, whenever he wanted to disappear, Claire remembered all of it. Funny what memory keeps. "I sent invitations," Noah said quietly. Claire almost laughed. "You sent one invitation." Noah winced. Because she was right. The invitation had arrived exactly 12 days earlier. No note. No apology. No explanation. Just a wedding invitation. As if 11 years could be folded into an envelope and mailed away. The wedding coordinator awkwardly cleared her throat. "Should we maybe continue with..." "No." Everyone turned. The voice belonged to Margaret's old friend, Eleanor. 83 years old. Tiny. Sharp as a razor blade. And absolutely fearless. She stood from her chair, looked directly at the Reed family, then said something nobody expected. Let the girl speak. The ballroom went silent. Completely silent. Claire felt a lump rise in her throat, because Eleanor had been one of Margaret's closest friends, one of the few people who never disappeared after Claire left. Eleanor smiled gently, the same smile Margaret used to wear. And suddenly, Claire didn't feel alone anymore. Noah took a slow breath. "Can we talk?" Claire studied him, really studied him. He looked exhausted. Not wedding day nervous. Something deeper. Something heavier. For the first time all evening, she noticed it. The guilt. The regret. The sadness. It sat behind his eyes like an old wound. And that surprised her. Because for years, she'd imagined Noah as part of the problem. Maybe he was. Standing there now, he looked more like someone haunted by it. Claire glanced around the ballroom. Every face watching. Every guest listening. Every secret suddenly exposed. Then she nodded. "Okay." Noah exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for 11 years. They stepped outside onto a terrace overlooking the lake. The October air felt cool against Claire's skin. The wedding music faded behind them. For a few moments, neither spoke. Finally, Noah laughed nervously. I had this whole speech prepared. Claire folded her arms. How's that working out? He laughed again, this time more genuinely. Pretty terrible. For the first time all evening, Claire almost smiled. Almost. Noah stared out across the water, then quietly said, I looked for you. Claire blinked. What? What? Noah nodded. I looked for you. She stared, not believing him, not even a little. Noah sighed. I know how that sounds. Yeah, it sounds like a lie. Exactly. Noah nodded, because he couldn't argue. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, opened something, and handed it to her. Claire looked down. Her stomach tightened instantly. Old emails. Dozens of them. Sent over years. Different addresses. Different dates. Different attempts. Some bounced back. Some were never answered. One was nearly 8 years old. Another 6. Another 3. The oldest was from 6 months after she'd left. Claire felt suddenly dizzy, because she had never seen any of them. Not one. Noah. Her voice sounded smaller now. He shrugged sadly. You changed numbers. I know. You moved. I know. You disappeared. Claire looked away. 'Cause he wasn't wrong. When she left Cedar Ridge, she left completely. New city. New apartment. New life. New everything. Noah stared at the lake, then finally said what he'd been carrying all these years. I should have stopped them. Claire froze. He continued before she could answer. When Mom and Dad stopped talking about you. A pause. When they packed away your stuff. Another pause. When they acted like losing you was easier than admitting they hurt you. His voice cracked slightly. I should have said something. Claire didn't speak. Couldn't. Because this wasn't the conversation she'd expected. She expected excuses, defensiveness, revisionist history. Instead, she got regret, raw and ugly. The real kind. Noah laughed bitterly. You know what's funny? Claire shook her head. No. He looked at her, eyes shining. I kept telling myself I wasn't part of it. A pause. I wasn't the one who pushed you away. Another pause. I wasn't the one making the decisions. Then he swallowed hard. That silence counts too. The words hit Claire harder than anything else that evening. Because they were true. Painfully true. Sometimes people don't hurt you with actions. Sometimes they hurt you by standing still while someone else does. Back inside the ballroom, the wedding guests continued whispering. And across the room, Diane Reed sat completely motionless, staring at something in her lap. Something nobody else noticed. Except Richard. When he looked down, his face changed instantly, because in Diane's trembling hands was an old photograph, one she hadn't seen in over a decade. A photograph Margaret had secretly kept. A photograph of 2 little girls, one smiling at the camera, and one standing beside her, holding her hand. Claire. And suddenly, for the first time in 11 years, Diane Reed began remembering things she'd spent a very long time trying to forget. The ballroom looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, champagne towers, a string quartet playing softly near the stage. The kind of wedding people spent years planning. The kind Claire would have loved once. Back when she still believed she belonged in family photos. Back when she still believed her last name meant something. Now, it was just another room. Another place. Another chapter. She stood near the entrance holding a simple silver clutch. No dramatic entrance. No revenge dress. No billionaire energy. Just quiet confidence. The kind that took 11 painful years to build. For a moment nobody noticed her. Then someone did. An older aunt. A woman Claire hadn't seen since she was 19. The aunt froze. Actually, froze. Her wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. Her eyes widened. And suddenly, everything changed. Because people started looking where she was looking. One head turned. Then another. Then another. Conversation slowed. Laughter faded. Forks stopped moving. Like a wave rolling through the room. Claire could practically feel it happening. Recognition. Confusion. Disbelief. Oh my God. Someone whispered. Is that Claire? Another voice. No way. It can't be. Except it was. And for the first time in 11 years, nobody could pretend otherwise. Across the room, Noah turned. His smile disappeared instantly. The room around him seemed to blur. Claire. ... Standing there. Real. Not a memory. Not a regret. Not a name nobody said anymore. His sister. The sister he'd lost. The sister he'd failed. For several seconds. Neither moved. The distance between them wasn't 30 feet. It was 11 years. 11 years of silence. 11 years of birthdays. 11 years of holidays. 11 years of pretending. Noah slowly stepped away from his groomsmen. His fiancée, Olivia, touched his arm. Are you okay? He didn't answer. Because honestly, he wasn't. Near the center of the ballroom, Victoria Reed looked up from a conversation and saw Claire. Her face drained of color. The champagne flute slipped slightly in her hand. Not enough to fall. Enough to shake. Beside her, Richard saw the expression. Then, followed her gaze. And for the first time all evening, the powerful businessman looked completely lost. Like somebody had suddenly turned the lights on. Claire noticed both of them. Her mother. Her father. Older now. Smaller somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. Because when you stop carrying the need for someone's approval, they lose power over you. And Claire no longer needed theirs. Not anymore. The first person who reached her wasn't Noah. It wasn't her parents. It wasn't even a relative. It was Olivia, the bride. Claire blinked in surprise. The young woman approached carefully, like someone walking toward a wounded animal. Not afraid, just respectful. Claire. Claire nodded. Olivia smiled softly. I'm Olivia. I know. Olivia laughed nervously. Right. What? A brief, awkward silence followed. Then Olivia looked genuinely emotional. I'm really glad you came. Claire studied her, searching for hidden meaning. Finding none? The woman seemed sincere, completely sincere. And somehow, that made it harder. Because kindness always hurt more when you hadn't expected it. Thank you. Olivia nodded, then quietly added, Noah's been hoping you'd show up. Claire glanced across the room, toward her brother, standing frozen near the dance floor, watching, waiting, looking terrified. For the first time all evening, Claire felt her heart crack a little. Not because she was angry, because she remembered. She remembered a 12-year-old boy who used to leave cookies outside her bedroom door. A 15-year-old boy who taught her how to drive. A 17-year-old boy who punched a kid for making fun of her braces. Noah hadn't always been silent. That's what made everything harder. He'd loved her once. Then life got complicated. Then adults got involved. Then silence became easier, and easier, and easier, until 11 years disappeared. Across the ballroom, a small voice interrupted Claire's thoughts. "Excuse me." Claire looked down. A little girl stood there, maybe 7 years old. Big brown eyes, tiny flower girl dress. The na-na-dionda, ahoy. "My grandma says you're famous." Claire nearly choked laughing. "What?" The little girl nodded seriously. "She says everybody keeps talking about you." Several nearby guests laughed. Even Claire smiled. Kids had a way of slicing through tension. The little girl tilted her head. "Are you famous?" Claire crouched slightly. "Nope." The child thought about that, then shrugged. "Oh, istänien," and wandered off. Just like that. The tension eased. Only a little, but enough. Then something unexpected happened. A middle-aged woman approached holding a hardcover novel. Claire recognized it instantly. One of Storybridge Publishing's biggest releases. The woman stared at Claire, then at the book, then back at Claire. Her mouth fell open. Oh my goodness. Claire immediately knew where this was going. The woman turned the book over, pointed to the publisher logo, then back to Claire. "You're Claire Bennett." Not a question, a statement. Nearby guests overheard, and suddenly curiosity exploded. "Who's Claire Bennett? What does she do?" "Wait. Storybridge." The woman looked stunned. "My daughter got her publishing contract through Storybridge." More people turned. Someone pulled out a phone. Someone else searched the company. Within seconds, whispers filled the room. Not because Claire was rich, not because she was important, but because people were realizing something. The woman they'd ignored, the woman nobody had spoken about, had quietly built something remarkable, without any of them. And the most shocking part, she'd never once told them. Claire looked around the ballroom. The whispers, the stares, the surprise, and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, no victory, just peace. Because the company wasn't the point. It never had been. The point was that she'd survived. She'd built a life. She'd found people who stayed, people who chose her, people who never asked her to earn belonging. And that mattered more than any business success ever could. Then Noah finally started walking toward her. Slowly, nervously, like a man approaching the biggest regret of his life. The room seemed to hold its breath. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the music felt quieter. Claire watched him come closer. One step, then another, then another, until he stood directly in front of her. For a moment, neither said a word. 11 years of silence standing between them. Then Noah looked at her, his eyes already filling with tears, and finally whispered, "Hey, Claire." Claire swallowed hard, because after 11 years, hearing her brother say her name almost broke her. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody even seemed to breathe. Claire stood in the center of the ballroom holding the old photograph. The same photograph she'd carried across 3 states. The same photograph that proved she hadn't imagined her childhood. That she had existed. That she had belonged there once. Across the room, Noah looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His bride, Rachel, stared between them in confusion. "What is going on?" she whispered. Noah opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Then Claire did something nobody expected. She lowered the photograph and smiled. Not an angry smile. Not a bitter smile. Just a tired one. "Relax," she said softly. "I'm not here to ruin anything." The tension didn't disappear. If anything, it got worse. because suddenly everyone realized she wasn't there for revenge. And somehow made the situation even harder. Eleanor Reed finally found her voice. Her daughter looked at her for the first time. Really looked at her. 11 years. And somehow Eleanor looked older than Claire remembered. Smaller somehow. More fragile. But Claire felt nothing she expected. No rage. No satisfaction. Just distance. The kind that grows when too much time passes. "You look good, Mom." The words landed awkwardly. Eleanor started crying instantly. Richard Reed looked away, like he couldn't bear to watch. Like maybe he finally understood what silence had cost. Guests began quietly stepping back, giving the family space. Rachel squeezed Noah's hand. "Who is she?" Noah swallowed hard. "My sister." The words nearly broke him, because it was probably the first time he'd said them out loud in years. "My sister." Claire noticed, and for the first time all evening, she saw a genuine shame in his eyes. Not embarrassment, not discomfort. Shame. There was a difference. Margaret's lawyer stepped forward. The elderly man adjusted his glasses. "Miss Reed?" Claire nodded. "I believe your grandmother wanted this given to you today." He handed her a small sealed envelope. Claire froze. The handwriting on the front stole the air from her lungs. She would have recognized it anywhere. Margaret. Her grandmother. Her safe place. Her person. The one person who never stopped calling. Never stopped writing. Never stopped believing. Even when everyone else did. Claire carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter and a small brass key. The entire room seemed to disappear. Only the letter remained. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. "My sweet Claire, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And if I know this family, they're probably making things harder than they need to." A few people laughed softly through their tears. That sounded exactly like Margaret. Claire smiled despite herself, then continued reading. "You spent too many years believing you were the problem. You weren't. Families are supposed to make room for people, not ask them to shrink." Claire had to stop for a moment. Her vision blurred. "I know you've built a beautiful life. I know because I paid attention, even when others didn't. And sweetheart, I hope one day you understand something. The people who couldn't see your value were never the ones who determined it." The room had become completely silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Nobody wanted to miss a word. "That key belongs to the cedar chest in my attic. Everything inside belongs to you. Not because you earned it. Because it was always yours. Love. Grandma." Claire lowered the letter. The room remained still. Then Noah quietly asked, "What was she talking about?" Claire stared at the brass key. She honestly didn't know. Margaret had never mentioned any chest. Never mentioned any secret. Nothing. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There is one more thing." Everyone turned. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. Contents of Margaret Reed's final estate instructions. Richard frowned. "What estate instructions?" The lawyer looked surprised. "She never told you?" Apparently not. Because Richard suddenly looked nervous. Very nervous. And for the first time all evening, Claire realized something important. Whatever Margaret left behind, nobody else knew about it. And judging by the expression on her father's face, the surprise wasn't over. Not even close. The lawyer waited until the room became completely silent. Then he opened the folder and smiled. Not because anything was funny, because he'd clearly been waiting a very long time for this moment. Margaret Reed left very specific instructions. Richard shifted uncomfortably. His wife looked equally nervous. Noah glanced between them. Claire simply stood there holding the brass key, still trying to process the letter, still trying to hear her grandmother's voice in every word. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, then continued. Margaret requested that her final personal belongings be released only if Clare Reed and the rest of the family were present together. A ripple moved through the room. People exchanged confused looks. Claire frowned. Why? The lawyer smiled softly. She didn't say, then added, although, knowing Margaret, a small chuckle. I suspect she knew exactly what she was doing. A few guests laughed, because that sounded very much like Margaret. 2 hours later, the wedding reception was over. Not ruined, just changed. Rachel and Noah still had their first dance, still cut the cake, still celebrated. But everyone knew the real story of the evening wasn't the wedding. It was Clare, the daughter nobody talked about, the sister nobody mentioned, the woman who had suddenly returned and changed everything. The following morning, for the first time in 11 years, Claire drove back to her grandmother's house. The old white farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel road, exactly where she'd left it. The porch swing still creaked. The flower beds still bloomed. The wind still moved through the oak trees. For one painful second, Claire expected Margaret to walk outside carrying sweet tea, like she always had. But, of course, the porch remained empty. Some absences never stop hurting. Richard arrived first, then Eleanor, then Noah and Rachel. Nobody seemed comfortable. Nobody seemed sure what to say, which honestly felt appropriate. 11 years of silence doesn't disappear overnight. Eventually, they climbed into the attic. Dust floated through beams of sunlight. Old furniture sat beneath white sheets. Boxes lined the walls. And near the back, Claire found it. A cedar chest. Exactly where Margaret said it would be. The brass key slid into the lock. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Claire turned the key. Click. Duh. The lid slowly opened. And suddenly, the entire family froze. Inside wasn't money. Not jewelry. Not property documents. Nothing anyone expected. Instead, there were boxes. Dozens of them. Carefully labeled. Year after year. Birthday after birthday. Christmas after Christmas. Graduation after graduation. Every box carried the same name. Clare. The room went completely silent. Claire slowly opened the first one. Inside sat birthday cards. Every birthday. Every single year. Margaret had saved them. Even the ones never sent. Even the ones returned. Even the ones nobody answered. There were photographs too. Hundreds of photographs. Pictures Richard and Eleanor thought were gone. Pictures of Claire. At 20, 21, 25. 9. Photos Margaret secretly collected over the years. Photos from book signings, magazine articles, publishing events, community programs, stories, achievements, life. A whole life. Preserved. Protected. Remembered. Eleanor suddenly sat down. Hard. Like her legs had stopped working. Her hands covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Because for the first time, she saw it. Not the successful publisher. Not the woman everyone admired. Her daughter. Growing older without her. Year after year. Moment after moment. Memory after memory. And she'd missed all of it. No. The word barely escaped. No. Claire looked over. Her mother's shoulders shook. The sight felt strange. Because for years, Claire Imagined this moment. Imagined her mother regretting it. Imagined satisfaction. Closure. Justice. Standing there now? All she saw was pain. And somehow, that wasn't satisfying at all. Then Noah found something. A thick envelope. Hidden beneath the photographs. Margaret's handwriting covered the front. For my family. All of you. Read together. Noah carefully opened it. Then began reading aloud. Families don't usually fall apart because of one terrible moment. Most of the time they fall apart because people stay quiet. The attic became still. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. One person stays silent because they're afraid. Another stays silent because they're proud. Another stays silent because they think there's still time. Then one day, there isn't. Noah stopped reading, his voice breaking. Claire stared at the floor, because every sentence felt aimed directly at them. The saddest thing about losing Claire wasn't that she left. The saddest thing was that everyone convinced themselves she chose it, when the truth is, yeah. Every one of you helped build the road she walked away on. Richard closed his eyes. The words hit hard. Harder than anyone expected. Because, deep down, every single person knew they were true. Then came the final paragraph. The one Margaret probably spent years waiting to say. Claire never needed permission to matter. She mattered the day she was born. She mattered when nobody understood her dreams. She mattered when she left. And she mattered while everyone pretended she didn't. If you learn anything after I'm gone, learn that. Love people before it's too late. Nobody spoke. Not for a very long time. Finally, Richard stood. Slowly, like the weight of 11 years sat on his shoulders. He walked toward Claire, stopped a few feet away, and looked directly at her. For the first time since she was 19. No excuses. No speeches. No defenses. Nothing rehearsed. Just truth. His voice cracked immediately. I'm sorry. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. Richard swallowed hard. I was so busy trying to build the family, I thought we should be. A pause. I stopped seeing the family we already had. The room became silent again, because everybody knew how hard those words were for him. Then Eleanor stepped forward too, tears streaming freely. I missed 11 years. Her voice shook. I missed 11 years of my daughter. Claire couldn't answer, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Because some wounds heal, but they never completely disappear. Noah looked at her, eyes red. I'm done being quiet. Claire laughed through tears. A small laugh, the kind that carries heartbreak and hope at the same time. Good. Later that afternoon, the family sat together on Margaret's porch. The same porch where everything once felt safe. The same porch where Claire learned she didn't have to earn love. The same porch where Margaret always believed she'd return one day. Nobody talked about fixing the past. Because you can't. Nobody promised everything would magically be okay. Because life doesn't work like that. Instead, they talked. Really talked. For the first time in years. And that felt like enough. As the sun began setting, Claire looked out across the fields. Warm golden light stretched across the property. The wind moved softly through the trees. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. She didn't feel like the erased sister. She didn't feel like the family mistake. She simply felt like Claire. And maybe that was the real ending. Not that her family finally recognized her worth. Not that they saw her success. Not that they regretted their choices. The real ending was this. Claire no longer needed their permission to matter. Because she had always mattered. Even when nobody said it. Even when nobody saw it. even when every photograph told a different story. And sometimes, the people who erase you from their memories don't get to decide your value. The only person who does is you.
Subscribe my channel Timeless Tales Story and press the bell icon for more inspiring stories.